Okay, today on the buy round, we are joined by Sharks captain Wade Graham. Wade, thanks for joining us here on the buy round, mate. It's great to have you on.
Jam, it's a pleasure. I've been keeping tabs on you, mate, watching a bit of it. It's been outstanding. So I was waiting for the call up to be a part of it. Thanks.
Well, here you are, mate. First off, how you going? How's everything been with the body in the off season, the pre-season?
Yeah, I'm going good. I'm not going to lie, like we're post Christmas now, 3 weeks in the back end of a big-ish week, so feeling the pinch a bit. But it is what it is, mate. You have to do the work. You can't hide away from it. And it's just that time of year where the footy's getting closer, so at least we're playing a bit more footy on the training field. But yeah, we're right at that point now where we're ripping in every day. So feeling good, but feeling the pinch.
Yeah, don't miss that. Don't miss that at all.
Well, that's one of the things. Like,
it's a tough time of year, isn't it?
Yeah, but you need it.
Mate,
need to do it. Like,
there's no escaping it.
Yeah, if you want to survive until October, like you need to do the work now. And it's one of those things you learn as you get older. You know, as soon as you don't get a good preseason, you're chasing your tail for a long time. And
absolutely behind the eight ball. And it screws you over later in the year, no doubt. We were just chatting a little bit before we hit the record button about being in Canada. How was the off season over there?
Well, I didn't actually get an opportunity to go to Canada this year. So for those who don't know, my partner's Canadian. She's from Quebec, Montreal, Quebec. So she's French Canadian. And I actually haven't been able to get over there since pre-COVID, which has been disappointing. I love every opportunity to go over there. It's such a different culture and a different place, and of course we get to catch up with her family. But we did get to go to New Caledonia, which is just above New Zealand. It's only a 2.5 hour flight from Sydney, which helps with the two kids, a 2 and a 4-year-old. So that was cool. French culture, immersed in it. The missus had a great time. And we got my brother-in-law came out. So he came out just after Christmas, spent a couple of weeks here, and I took him around, Cronulla mostly, but Sydney, and he had a couple of days in the sun. He left. There was a snowstorm in Montreal like a few days before he left, and he flew down here. And we didn't have the best weather over Christmas, but he got a couple of really hot days. Got him out the boat harbour in the Hilux, and he got so burnt, man. We took him for dinner that night to Sea Level, which is a nice place in Cronulla, and he dead set looked like one of the prawns or the lobsters. He was out.
Yeah, that Aussie sun can hit you. But just on the Canadian aspect of it, we were talking about you've been pretty vocal about how you're learning French. And your boys as well, like only speaking French at home. It's quite it's different from the average NRL player. You grew up in Western Sydney, and here you are now at home, and everyone's speaking this foreign language. Yeah.
It's actually kind of cool, to be honest. I enjoy it. So my missus is massive on it. Well, to go back to the start of the story, so my missus' parents they speak broken English. Like her mum especially. I probably speak more French now than her mum speaks English. And my dad's okay, but when there's a lot of English speaking, he finds it hard to keep up. So he sort of withdraws from the conversation. So it's essential for us, like our children, if they want to speak to her parents, their grandparents, they need to be able to speak French, right? So. Yeah, my missus only speaks French to the kids at home. All their cartoons, on TV, whenever there's an option for French audio, it goes on the French, and they pick it up. It's amazing, right? She speaks to them in French, and then I can speak to them in English and say the same thing, and they understand both. They go and do the actions, go to the fridge and get the food or whatnot. It's incredible, and I just think, it's such a cool skill to have. I know it might be a bit of a ball breaker for them, coming through, like being both languages, but once they get the skill, the world's only getting smaller for the next generations.
It's a huge advantage to have for any human being to be able to speak 2 languages. Like, who knows what technology is going to be available, but to actually have that skill, to articulate yourself in a foreign language. I'll give you a story. So we were recently, the family, we did a bit of traveling in the off season. And we were in Paris in this restaurant. My daughter's like, Dad, why are you speaking funny? I'm like, what are you talking about? And she's like, I was doing really badly the stereotypical Englishman in a foreign country being like, could I have a croissant? And she was like, cafe. And she was like, why are you she was doing impressions of me in this cafe. I'm like, do I sound like that? And everyone's like, yes, you do. I'm like just that dreaded. There's been a few. There's actually a couple of Joey Barton, who's a footballer. He signed for Marseille, and he's doing his interview, and he does it all in that how you say, I'd like to play with Marseille, and it's like, no, but that was me in this restaurant. And my daughter was picking up on it. It was horrible. But mate, it's such a.
Mate, like, I don't think that we don't have enough time to go through how many times I've stuffed up in the language over there. Like you feel like you're getting a little bit better and you get a little bit more confident, and then you try and get amongst it, and you stuff up the smallest word, and someone fires something back, and then I just go, you like the stage fright, and you withdraw from the conversation. I normally go to the point. Je ne parle français, like I don't speak that much French. I speak English, but I am getting better. But you're right, it's so hard, and as soon as you do make a mistake, you sort of get a little bit embarrassed and you withdraw. And mate, especially when you're with like family, extended family, they pick up and they give you stick. Like my brother-in-law, he gives me stick for like I try to say French. What are you saying? Like in English. Like,
or you've got your line, right? Like I've done that before, gone somewhere. So I've spent a bit of time in Montreal as well. Got my line, right? I've got my line to ask for something, and then they fire back something. I'm like,
before we move on, I'll tell you a story of my own. So there was one day we were over in Montreal, and I was hungry, and I always like at the start of our relationship, I'd always get my missus to do things, but by the end of the trip, I wanted some Subway, and my missus goes, just go order it. Like, there's no one around. It's the middle of the day. Like, you'll be fine. Like, there's no one there. Go in there and do it. So, I walk in. There's no one in there. So I'm actually like, yes, perfect. And out comes this like 16-year-old teenager like girl, zero English, zero. So she spoke to me in French, and I was like, I don't know what she's doing. And then literally as she happened, like the door opened, like 10 people came in behind me, so I could feel the pressure of a lot of people behind me, and she was saying something to me, but I was stuck, right? I didn't know what to do, and then there's some little old lady from the back of the line yells out, she wants to know what bread you want. And then, like, and you think about it, even in English, you know, the first step of Subway is to pick your bread. Mate. And I was like, every now and again, like, I'll be like, we'll be at a family dinner or something, and we'll be speaking French, and my missus was just like, she wants to know what bread you want. It's perfect, mate.
How bad is that? It's so bad, mate. It's just, you know what? That reminds me when we were in England, we were under 15s. We played a French team, the French under 15 side, so we went over there to play them, but we didn't take an English speaking. Like we didn't take anyone that could speak French, so they were sorting out like what we were gonna have like the day of the game, and they've just gone like like ham and cheese sandwiches, like pretty, like, you know, a couple of hours before you got. Well, ham in French is like the raw ham kind,
thick,
not so to get what we were after, you need jambon. And also like the cheese, like ham, like we're there 15-year-old scallywags with these what we were expecting, just like these big, like massive baguettes as well, with like, you know, the fancy ham and like all this like the proper like French cheese.
I can see it in my head.
Are we supposed to eat this before we go out and play? We were like blowing up the look, but yeah, it's just one of those lost in translation.
Brilliant, man, brilliant.
Yeah. Anyway, mate, we're talking about all things all over the globe there, but originally from the West.
Yes, yeah.
Is the Shire home now?
Yeah, it's definitely home for me now. I've lived down there since, I think, 2012. I bought my place in Port Hacking there, so I've been in the same place. I grew up in Blacktown. I was always, and I loved that where I come from. I still do. My mum and dad live out there. My sisters live out there. My nephews played footy out there. And I still have that, I love going back. It's a pretty sad story. I went to a funeral 2 weeks ago out there, and it was, it's a sad event, but there was so many positives to go back out there because I'd seen, it was one of my father's friends, and I'm the only boy in my family, so I grew up close to my dad and was out on the weekends playing golf with dad and all his mates. And it was good to sit back and, you know, I had a beer with a lot of the old blokes that I haven't seen in a long time. But, you know, all of these old blokes had such an influence on me when I was young, and they followed my career from the start. And it was just good to catch up with a lot of those people. So I still have that love and respect for all those guys where I grew up. But Cronulla is definitely home for me now. Like, I've settled in my own house down there. My partner lives, you know, moved in. Like, I went from a single bloke to meet my missus. She moved in, you know, turned, you know, a house, like a halfway house where I used to, you know, just go and sleep at night sometimes, or leave the house on Wednesday and get back on Sunday to, you know, it's a family home now. My two boys are growing up in it. And yeah, we love it, mate. You have to drag me out of there if I'm living in Australia.
It is a beautiful part of the world, and I live there myself over in the Shire. It's amazing. But you know, when you go back out west, do they treat you differently because you're
nah,
are they all right about
nah,
it? Like,
they're all right.
The
They're
one
all
that
right.
got away kind of thing.
No, they're all right. They're all right out west. And to be fair, like, a lot of the guys I grew up with live out in Cronulla now as well. Like, you look at, like, all the guys like Louis, who I started my career with, and, you know, I was his ball boy at Blacktown. He lives around the corner from me. Matty Moylan, you know, I still go to training with him. He grew up probably 5 kilometres away from me. Andrew Fafita was I know he claims he's from Griffiths and that, but Andrew grew up in Doonside. Like, we played against each other as kids. So these are guys I knew as, you know, started in high school with, played footy against their brothers or, you know, family members, you know, and some of them I still see every day. It's like we've never left high school at times. Yeah. So there is still that connection, and a lot of the guys, you know, I know people think it's a long way out to Western Sydney, but it's not that far. Yeah. It's not that far. So I still see some of the guys I grew up with, and I still have that connection out there. And but it's just that, you know, I've lived in Cronulla for such a long time now, so where I've made my house.
Yeah. Yeah, like I say, beautiful part of the world, and I'm glad they don't give you too much stick. I on the other hand, when I go back to England, it's like, oh, Sydney latte boys in town. It's like,
well, I actually live next to a Londoner, to be honest. He lives in neighbours who we're really close with. We're close with our family. It's helped us out a lot with my missus' family being, you know, overseas, so she hasn't got that really good support network. But we're really close with our neighbours, and their kids help out with our kids. But he's from North London, so I get that English connection myself.
Yeah, nice.
You might have to come over and have a beer with him, mate. Whenever you're missing home.
I've got a rubber arm, mate. So, I'll come in the safety shorts though, so don't venture out to any of the night spots. Mate, before we get into your playing career, pressing issue at the moment. You're an RLPA board member. What is going on, and where are we at? Because it just, you know, I know what it's like going through these negotiations, but it just seems so confusing, and
yeah,
I just don't understand why it hasn't been sorted out.
So where it's got to, and what's happened over the last week. All right, so it's been going for a long time, this CBA negotiations. It's a long drawn out process. It probably kicked off later than it should have. You know, there is, you know, a lot goes into it. It's a CBA. It's a long form CBA. It's employment terms and conditions and obligations that players as employers have to uphold, and then it's, you know, their rights and the opportunities they have within that, and what they can and can't do. Right. So there's a lot goes into the document. So it started late, and then, you know, there wasn't much headway to begin with. Like, there hasn't been much headway, and to be fair, the broader playing group as a whole has been keen to be a bit more proactive through it, because they feel like the process has been going slow, and we haven't been able to get any traction or make any headway.
Why is it so slow?
Well, at the beginning, I think, you know, NRL management really underestimated how much work had to go into it, because I don't think it was certainly Andrew's first time going through a CBA, which is the long form document. You need to, you know, negotiate over certain parts of it, but then once you decide where that part finishes, you need to put it all in writing, right? All in form, down in dot points, so there's no grey area, and you know exactly where you stand. So I think at the beginning it was just sort of wrapping their heads around how much was actually went into it, and trying to work out and read the document, read where it's come from, and the claims of the RLPA where they wanted to improve or adjustments they wanted made. And then, so Andrew went through that process with the rest of his team. They had to understand the document, understand where everything was. So that process took a while. And then once we got back to the table, there was back and forth, no headway. And then so Peter came in to try and help out. He was sort of there. And then again, Peter had to understand the document. And we had to go through that process again. And all this time in the background, the players are going like, what's going on? Like, we want to be proactive. We want to put some pressure on. You know, we feel like we should be involved more vocally. But the RLPA team especially, you know, were determined to just do it the right way. We didn't want to cause waves. We understand it's a bad look, right, when it looks like when management and players aren't seeing eye to eye. So we try to persist like pre-Christmas to get into the room and see if we could, reach terms that both parties could agree on, and we just couldn't get there at the end before Christmas. So it was sort of it's hard over Christmas. Everyone sort of downs tools like you do, and so that sort of happened. And then pre-Christmas, there was the announcement on the salary cap, which hadn't been agreed to. It's hard to announce a salary cap. It's one part of a broader deal, right? So
with the salary cap, are the players fundamentally like happy with that?
Yeah, well, the salary caps.
Or is that still to be
negotiated,
or is that the salary cap is obviously part of it?
Yeah, it's part of it. Yeah.
You know, you could argue is the main focus point.
Well, it's the main focus point for, seems the NRL. It seems the NRL. You know, and the reason they need clarity around what the salary cap's going to be is for clubs, so clubs can organise their roster, right?
Yeah.
But you can't agree on one thing over here when it's dependent on a lot of things like contracting model, how many players go into the top 30, if there's is there match payments to players outside 30? Is this going to go into the cap? Is it going to be out of the cap? But there's a lot of things that go into it, right? So that's why it's dependent on a whole lot of things. What's the soft cap? What's the outside your top 30 cap? Is that a part of it? Does that come out of it, or is that an add-on? Like, so all those things need to be worked through. And I get the NRL wanting to give the industry clarity, like particularly clubs, right, to manage their roster, but to sort of come out on the front foot and wave the salary cap around a money issue, and it's really the biggest issues for the players have nothing to do with the financial terms, right? It's just things in the background around, agreement rights with employment conditions or injury hardship funds, trying to get some money into this fund that ultimately clubs can have access to if a player was to have a serious injury. So the club doesn't have a decision, do we need to pay this guy out of goodwill if he's off contract, if we can't medically retire, and maybe we can access this fund over here and take that pressure off. Or, the past players program, we really haven't, we're a long way away from where we need to be in the past players program. To be fair, it's a space that needs to be picked up, and the game, and NRL management is for sure, they agree with us in this area. It's an area that we need to work on, I think, together. But again, it's got to come from somewhere, right? So that's the sticking point. You've got to try and work out how all these pieces come together. And then, so how it's got to the point now is that yet again there was still no progress. And then a term sheet came through at the end of last week. And then it's sort of gone backward. It's the first real legal draft that the NRL has sent through of the long form. And it seemed to have gone backwards in a lot of areas, right? And then, so all these players who have been bubbling away behind, once they get this information, it sort of just went, well, it's over. Like, we're going to be more proactive. Until we actually get progress, we want to get on the front foot, and we want to start voicing our opinion that we're not happy with how the process is going. We're not happy with the level of the respect the NRL seem to be showing the RLPA with the process. And then once you get that momentum from players, we play a team sport. We're in it together. That's how we're designed, right, in our head. Once, players sort of say, this is what we're going to do, or the other players go, well, we're going to support you. We're going to stick with you. And that's how it all sort of bubbled to the surface at the start of this week.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you on the the focus or some of the focus being on the former players and honouring the past. And look, I get that there's people, well, we need money for grassroots, we need money for development. Obviously, the players are the game's most important commodity. They need to be rewarded. But for me, that space of the former player, we can really look to honour the past and really change the narrative around how our former players are treated.
Yeah, 100%. It shouldn't be. It's a hard game, right? And we're in a fortunate position, a privileged position. We get to do what we do. We love. We work hard for it. Have an opportunity to do it. But you give you a lot of your life, your best years of your life. You give you a lot of your, like, some of your health for it. And I just think at the end, you know, we see it. Well, we haven't seen anything up to this point, right? Yeah, a player finishes, you transition out, and so many players are lost to the game. And I think we should be able to. The game should be strong enough, you know, as NRL measurement and as current players and as clubs, we should be going, mate, you got a home in this game forever. Like, you gave tremendous service for the game. You advanced it, or you gave a lot, and this is what your life was. So you're in this for life. We got you for life.
Well, that's it. I think the players or the NRL players have earned the right to a minimum of an annual brain, body, and mind check-up.
Yeah.
Because for me, the benefit of that would be unbelievable, and it would change that narrative of how many times you hear it. A former player gets diagnosed or with X, Y, or Z, or is ill health, and it's like, I've not heard from anyone from the game for ages. Where this would give people a point to go to, and it's about handing responsibility over to them. Be like, mate, you need to get this fixed. You know, we hear it all the time. I only saw a doctor because my partner was nagging me.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, it doesn't need to be that way. And, well, hey, you know, I know there's plenty of people out there, the cost of living crisis, all that sort of stuff. But in my opinion, the players have earned the right to be looked after on even an annual checkup would be a great place to start. But so are you frustrated with the NRL? Are you disappointed with them?
Oh, it's frustrating because it's slow, right? Like, and you know, I've been through like almost 3 CBAs now. Like, I've been in negotiations for 2 different ones. You know, one as a youngster, just to sort of learn. I was in the peripheral. One at one during the middle of my career where I was actually arguing for and fighting for stuff that would directly affect me. And now at the end, like, you know, it's not really the next 3-4 years. You know, the playing sort of stuff is not really going to affect me. But I'm doing it for, you know, I do it because I'm experienced. I understand where the game is. And certainly, like, through COVID, it was sort of like, it was all hands on deck. So I sort of got involved. I joined the board, the RLPA board, just as COVID hit. And all of a sudden, you're all hands on deck. It was all scrambling. And then just through the back of that, it's just sort of rolled into, it was the above forecast distribution. And then it rolled into the CBA. So I sort of been at the table for a long time now with Peter and Andrew, like even before Andrew, with Todd, you know, at the start of COVID. So I've sort of just found myself in this position. But certainly the frustration around understanding the CBA process and how big it is. Like, we knew it was a big job. It's always a big job, right? And it just how late we got to the table, and then the whole going through all the issues, trying to understand what it was, and then, you know, bringing another person in, going through the same process again, making them understand what the issues were. And then we get pre-Christmas, we finally get a document. It seems to be going backwards in a lot of places.
Are you talking about some of the employment benefits and just minimum standards?
Oh, yeah, just the minimum standards to what CBA, if you compare last CBA to this CBA, some of the ways it's gone backwards, and even some of the things we've spoken about in the room. Like, it's like it hasn't even been put onto the paper, or it hasn't even been transferred to
the document.
To the document.
So you've said, X. Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, and it felt like it mightn't have got the X, but it certainly wasn't at Y. We sort of, the dialogue was we were in somewhere in the middle, and now that the documents come through, it's down at Y. It's like, well, that's not what we spoke about last time. But again, with the document, it's drafted by legal, so it sort of starts at a baseline. You send it back, and then we send the draft back with amendments, and they go back and forth. Like, it's a lot of back and forth, right? Which is, again, it drags the process on, which is why we got to getting to the table late was always a risk. And this is where it's coming to the new season, and it's starting to hurt everyone, because instead of filming our content and building up the 2023 season, this is the talking point. But I'm positive we'll work through it. Like, it's unfortunate, but we've got, some good leaders, some strong leaders. We'll get in there. The players are united. The club's actually united. The club support. I haven't spoke to one club CEO that hasn't supported the players' stance and support. The claims are pretty fair, mate. They're not asking for anything that's abnormal or over the top. The only, and the other frustrating thing as a player who's certainly been involved in a lot of it is the narrative about the money. The money's an aspect of it, but it's not actually the sticking point. Isn't the money? It's the other things around it that we're advocating for, and we haven't even started speaking about the women yet. That's just a whole nother jar fish. They haven't got season lengths yet, how many games they're going to play, what their leave entitlements are, pregnancy policy. They haven't got anything. It's their first CBA. And, and they can't sign contracts because they don't know what they're looking at. So it's still a process to work through. So I think hopefully with this week, the ripple effect from the players, hopefully it should be all hands on deck for the next 3-4 weeks before the season starts to try and get this thing done.
How far do you think the playing group are willing to go?
Well, like I said, the momentum's started, man. We had 50 players on a delegate call, which is all the player leaders and the delegates from the clubs, and there was not, everyone was pretty unanimous with, we're supporting this track we're going. Again, another a byproduct of COVID is, for the first time, it's probably united the players more than I've ever seen anything, right? Because you weren't just in a bubble for your own team. You're in a bubble for your opposition teams too, so we keep the game going. So everyone sort of knew, yes, we're doing it for us, and yes, we're competing for us as always, but there's this thing sitting over the top of this game, right? You're doing it for everyone. And because of all the dialogue, the changes in the circumstances and just the need to be kept up to date with information and what's happening, it's connected the whole playing group, really. The momentum started. I'm a bit of an optimist. I'm positive that now that there's a ripple effect, the clubs are supporting the players. The players are united. The game, has to have that level of understanding. And I think, whether it takes Andrew and Peter and Clint to sit in that room for 2-3 weeks before this season starts and just get the deal done. If you have an argument and you get emotional, sweet, take a time out, go and have a coffee, come back, restart. It's the priority. It has to be the priority.
Are the trials at risk?
I hope so. As an older player, nah. Listen, we're taking it week by week, man. We got it. So the first, it's obviously the first week where players have taken action. We've responded to that first proposal for the NRL. We had a board meeting last night. We're just sending a proposal back on some areas that we just wanted to look at and get clarity on what the actual terms meant. So that'll progress it. And, I think as long as we see it moving in a positive direction, the players, because that's all they want to see. The players just want to see it progressing, right?
Yeah.
They understand that it's a long process. Why there was action was because it got to a point where there was no progress, and they hadn't really been able to take action because we didn't want it to become this public thing. We wanted it to be done behind closed doors, done in good faith. We didn't want this to become a story, but it got to the point where the players said, no, we've had enough. We wanted to start doing some stuff to show that, we're not happy with this process.
Yeah, get the ball moving. Let's hurry up.
Yeah, so
it's not necessarily you use the strike word. It's just let's just get things moving and hurry up. And like for yourself, Wade, who's an experienced player, and you've benefited from a fabulous long career. How's the mood amongst some of those younger players, or those fringe players, where I'm assuming that some of these details to be nutted out could have a massive effect on.
Well, that's why it's not always about that. The salary cap, because the salary cap is there, right? And
and there's going to be guys that I've got a ratchet clause, so that's going to benefit me massive. But they're already going to be well looked after.
The salary cap is the salary cap, right? Your best players are always going to be paid the most out of the salary cap, because they're your best players, right? They win you the games,
and they deserve it,
and they deserve it. They win you the games. They have the profile which bring the sponsors in. That's who their fans, the members, that's the love. Like, they're the best players. They deserve the money. And that's where the salary cap, they're always going to get the most money, the top tier guys. And then, most of them play rep footy. So there's a little kicker there. So the top guys are always, if you work hard at your craft, you become the best you can, you get paid the money, right? And you deserve it. And you deserve it. All the other benefits around transition account, the hardship fund, the injury fund, or the past player fund, that's even across the board. That doesn't matter if you're the number one player or you're number 30 in your squad. That's the transitional fund is a fund. It's named a retirement account. It shouldn't be named a retirement account. It's not super. We pay our own super, right? You get your retirement when you're 55, right? What the transition account is, or retirement account in footy terms, it's a lump of money that goes into, it's put away for you. It got up to almost 12,000, but because of COVID, we needed to cut that all the way back. I think the sum is between 3,000 and 5,000. It goes annually to a player. So me, if I finish today, if I call it quits and finish today, I have this money that's accumulated. Over a 15-year career, I might have 100, 150,000 that I still need to pay tax on when I leave, but it's a little bit of money that helps me transition out. If I need to do a course, or if I want to start up my own small business, I've got this little thing put away. And that's given to players, like I said, 1 to 30. Doesn't matter, you're standing in a team. If you're in that squad, you're turning up to training every day. For your year, you get that put in away. And you'd like to think that all players, are good with their money. But if you're on 100,000 a year and you're getting taxed and you're looking after your family, like, you're almost paycheck to paycheck. So it's an incentive for these lower end guys.
What that also does is, if that wasn't put into retirement accounts and was just in the general salary cap, it'd go on the top two. It
goes in the top two.
So it's a better way to evenly distribute the clubs or the game's finances across those players, especially who are not the high.
Yeah, so it's things like that we're trying to sort of that's the sticking point in the background. Where can we get that? And we get it. It's not an unlimited source of money. There's not this golden tree that everything comes from. It's got to come from somewhere. And if my opinion, it could come from the salary cap. Like, does the salary cap really need to jump 12% or whatever it is, 10%? Does it really need to go up that much? But that's an argument you can talk about. But if the game's already agreed with clubs what the salary cap's going to be, without the players' input, well, it's hard to do a deal like that. It's three main stakeholders who have to work in this triangle. You agree with one stakeholder what the salary cap's going to be, but not the other, and then the other one misses out on the other side. So, well, that's not how you do a deal in this circumstance.
So how are those lads then that are,
No, they're supportive.
25 to 30.
Yeah, they're supportive. Because this is the benefits are for them, really.
Yeah.
Like, they benefit more from this than an increased salary cap, because, like I said, you increase the salary cap, the clubs get to, be a bit more flexible with their top end, and you can, you raise. I think minimum wage is raised, which helps a bit, especially, with inflation. The cost of living, it does help a bit, but it's the more the benefits that we're trying to work hard for, benefit those lower tier guys. So they're supportive. And the other things are basic stuff, like agreement rights on, scheduling. Like, if you want to add in a preseason competition, more games, will need to be agreed upon by the players. If you want to bring in 2 more teams and change, the NRL to a conference system, right, where it affects actually where you're playing and what you're doing. Like you sign a 3-year deal to play X amount, but then in the second year you get 2 more teams and change to a conference. Well, we think we earn the right to be at the table,
you think
agreeing to extra games or less games or a change. And to be fair, a lot of the ideas might be good ideas, and the players wouldn't say no, but they just want to be there to say, oh, hang on a minute, okay, we're happy to do that, and we'll support you. So it's basics. I think if you look at all the top metrics across all sports, and where currently the NRL sit with their agreement rights and their obligations throughout the CBA, we're down the bottom, which is, we want to be pushing for the best sport in the country. I think the NRL should encourage to have the best CBA that looks after their players, so we can be the number one in all facets.
Well, I think for me, it goes hand in hand. You'd want to encourage the best and brightest of the players to be involved in the game's future. We're not business people, or most of us aren't from a business background, but I'd like to think the players could contribute towards the success of the game. For me, you're talking there about, a pre-season a pre-season tournament. Get the players involved, get some ideas from them, or conference system. Well, it's going to mainly directly affect
and
the playing group. It just seems to me,
and that the NRL's there, the management's there to make business decisions for the game. Right, we don't want to run the game. The players don't want to run the game, but with things that directly affect the player, like scheduling, like how long the season's going to be, what your obligations are, with the club and the community, how, your leave entitlements. That if they want to be changed, employment conditions that directly affect the player. I think the RLPA should be in those meetings working out, firstly, why do you want to change it? Is it a good reason you want to change it? Can we help you find out if it's not a good reason? Can we help you find out if there is a better way? And if it's a great idea, well, sure, let's agree to it. But the fact that we don't have those agreement rights is pretty average, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, let's get back to you, mate. Anyway, we could have gone on forever there. You have had an amazing career so far. Will 2023 be your last?
Potentially, for sure. Could definitely potentially my last in the NRL for sure. I still have, you never say never, and footy's always a funny game, and I don't quite know right now. Sitting here right now, I'm feeling the pinch for a pre-season, but once the games start rolling around, the training, weeks lighten a bit, and it's all about the game, and the game I still enjoy. The game's actually, in a lot of senses now, easier than it's ever been, because you have the less anxiety around the actual build-up, and your weeks are a lot stress-free because you're not worrying so much. But this, if the body's okay, we still have, if an opportunity was to come up overseas, especially in France, because of the family situation, I would for sure look at it. But yeah, everything's on the cards. Obviously, opportunities outside the game. If there's an opportunity once I finish playing footy here to, go straight into a working industry, or, a position at the club. These are all things I'll have to weigh out with my family. But, potentially it could be.
I believe you don't have a manager though, do you?
No.
How would that work though? So, say you want to, you've got a great relationship with the staff at the Sharks. So I imagine getting a 1-year extension wouldn't be difficult. But how would you go about speaking to those clubs in the Super League or in those French lower leagues? Well,
I've already had a few conversations with the UK teams. I would say Catalans, Alex Chan reached out, and he's a footy manager over there. So I've already spoken to those teams and a couple of other English Super League teams once they heard Catalans was interested and had been in contact, just contacted me to say if I was actually thinking about going over to the UK just before you sign anything, we'd love the opportunity for me to hear them out. So I think just through word of mouth. Like I think players, like other players, other clubs, know that. Certainly in the NRL, know that I manage myself, and I think I've got a good enough relationship with a lot of people that it wouldn't be hard to track down my number if someone was interested. And if I'd rather just have the conversation myself with someone and gauge whether there's interest or legitimate interest rather than going for a third party to he said this and he said that. Like I'd be happy to sit down with anyone for a 5-minute chat over a coffee and gauge their interest. I've done that. I've done my last 2 deals with the Sharks on my own, and not this time round, but the previous round there was certainly interest from other clubs, and I had a few meetings. And to be honest, it hasn't been that challenging. I find it a much simpler process when you sit down with the coach and the footy manager, and they tell you your expectation, and you tell them your expectation, and there is genuine interest, and you go, well, we can work through this process, or there isn't genuine interest, and we're just not aligned. I found that process, not too hard, to be honest.
So you've got good negotiating skills. So I always think that for me, I'd love to have managed myself, but just that negotiation would be, I'd be a terrible.
Well, you need to like.
Is that a skill that you've worked on?
Oh, not really. Like I think you need to have the ability to be honest with yourself and where you sit and what an understanding of where you are in the pecking order or what you have to offer, what that other club might need, what they actually see in you, what is their level of interest, what I need in life, like what do I actually need to achieve, earn in life to provide for my family, and what's an acceptable thing in my head. So I think you need to just understand where you're at as a person and in your career, what your circumstance is, and if you know that, well, then it makes everything a lot easier. Like, well, in my book, like I'm at the stage now where I'm not going in there and arguing over an extra. I want this extra. I want this extra. I don't need that. It's obviously it was easier for me this year with Fitzy and Darren Mooney, who I've had a long relationship with. It was like, are you keen for one more? I said, I'm keen for one more. Are you happy with one more? And I was, yeah, we are. And then we obviously had a lot of guys off contract. He gave me a ballpark of what he think he could get to. I said, sweet, sort those guys out first, the young guys. They're the future and they're the priority of the club. You need to get those guys done. And then when you know exactly what's there for me and where you can fit me in, we'll get it done. That's why it happened so late. It happened like a week before I went to New Caledonia. Me and Moon sat down with Fitzy and dotted the I's and crossed the T's. And again, it was a pretty simple conversation when I had with Catalans. They were the only one who actually offered a deal. And I spoke to Alex. He was great. I said, listen, mate, I'm not here to play games. Like, I'm legitimately keen to come at some stage because of my family situation. You don't need to try and sway me or persuade me. Like, I've told you I'm interested. Like, put your deal down, what you think you can manage. And then, we'll go from there. So, yeah, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's worked out okay.
Yeah. So you definitely do this season. I guess we'll see what happens after that. But when you do finally hang up the boots, pull the curtain down, what do you think you'll do? Obviously, we've spoken at length about the connections to Quebec. Could you see yourself living there, or is is there a future? Obviously, you've got a role within the media at the moment. Football's been your passion since you were knee high to a grasshopper. So, what do you expect to be doing come that time?
Well, I definitely think we'll move overseas for a little bit, especially like for my partner's done her time here. Like we met, she was backpacking, right? So we met, and that was in end of 2015. And she had no idea what rugby league was. And once she learned I played sport, I was like, oh, how long do you think you'll play for? Like, what's it? Well, it's hard to tell in sport, right? You just never know. I said, probably about 5 more years. Like that was 2015. And then we got to the end of 28, I think it was, 2018 maybe. And I just signed a new deal. It was like a 3-year deal or a 4-year deal. And she goes, I thought you were finished in 5 years. I said, maybe another 5 years. And then we got to the end of this one. It's like, oh, you're going to sign another year over here? We're going to go overseas? It's like, oh, we'll just do one more and we'll see what happens, all right? But then it's got to the stage now where she's just settled. You know, we renovated our house. It got too small with the, you know, once we had the two boys. So it was either sell and move, or we had to make the house bigger and go up. And like I said, we love our street. We love our neighbours. We get on really well with everyone. So we put another level on the house. So I think it might be actually harder to get her to leave Australia in the near future than me. You know, throughout my career, like, you know, I've been dedicated to the game since I was probably, you know, 13 or 14 years old. Like, quite young, I made the decision that I wanted to be a footy player. And, you know, my pathway through Penrith happened exceedingly quick. You know, I was Harold Matts 2 years in a row as a 14-year-old, 15-year-old, 1 year SG ball, as, you know, played Jersey flag when I was 16, which was 20s back then. And then, you know, I was in the first grade team at 17. So it happened really quick, right? So all I've known is rugby league. I finished high school into a full-time rugby league career. So I think once I'm finished, you know, I would love to just get away for a bit, like get out of the rat race, because it's such a small bubble, right? We talk about, you know, it's big business and there's a lot of money at stake, and there's all these negotiations that we're going through right now. And I know, like, it's generates so much interest in Australia, because especially the East Coast, because it's such a big sport. But, you know, I go to Quebec and I'm reminded quick smart, no one gives a shit about rugby league over there, and it's actually refreshing, right? I go hang out with family and they like me because, you know, I'm Wade, I'm Kerry Ann's partner. I'm not Wade, the footy player for Cronulla. So it's good, and I'd like to escape that rat race for a little bit, but I'm conscious that, you know, out of sight, out of mind. You know, some of the opportunity, if I was to leave for 2 or 3 years, some of the opportunities that I do leave on the that I do leave might not be here when I come back. You know, the doors aren't always going to be open. So again, that's a decision we'll have to think about as a family, and make those decisions at the time. But Charlie's guaranteed me, whenever I come home, he'll always have something for me. So.
Nice, Charlie. Matt, I tell you what though,
well, Charlie's a good example. Like, so at the time when I actually left my manager, the decision, I actually had a great manager, Mark Stewart. He looked after me perfect. He wasn't I didn't have a lot of clientele, so I knew he was looking after me. He was great. He helped me save my money, bought my first house, saved my money again, bought the house in, you know, Lillypilly, Caringbah South. He did a great job for me. It was just by the time I turned 26 and my missus was pregnant, and I've always dealt with guys in the media myself, like the producers myself. I said, don't worry about ringing the manager. If you need me or you want me to come, just call me and then just talk to me. It's easy just to talk to me. I can sort it out. And that's how it started to develop, right? I started organising all of my own things, and certainly when I got my missus, she organised my life. Like, she taught me how to use a computer and, you know, how to invoice and all this stuff, be organised. And then I was like, well, I'm about to have my first son. Like, if I really can't look after myself, how can I look after, you know, another boy? So I sat down with my manager. It was a hard conversation, because we did get along so well. It was like breaking up with missus, right? I said, mate, like, thanks, but, you know, I'm going to go it alone from here. And I actually said, like, he was upset, but I actually said, mate, you should be actually proud. Like, you've got me to this point in my life. And I'm a 26-year-old man, and I need to be able to look after myself. Like,
it's not you, it's me.
Yeah, like, I need to be able.
Seriously, it's me.
I can't be having an issue, ringing you, saying, mate, I've got this problem. Can you sort it out? You know, I need to be man enough to go, mate, I've got a problem. I need to sort my problem out. You know, how can I teach my son how to be a man and to sort his own shit if I was being babysitted my whole life because I played footy? So I got to that point, and because I was sort of, you know, managing half of my affairs anyway, it just was a natural progression.
Yeah, nice. That's good.
I think I've broke the mic. Charlie, can you come help me? Can't sort out my own problems.
Yeah. I tell you what though, mate, like, if you do move there, like, you know what, I reckon, like, I've got a week or two in the winter there, and that is enough to imagine being there.
I know. Long term, I think it would be hard for sure, right? Because it's a pain in the ass. Like, living in the snow, it's hard. It's hard to live. Like, it's hard. Like, we're going to go to the shop, sweet, dress the kids up, put the snowsuits on. Like, it's just
shoveling your
there's a lot going on.
Shoveling your driveway and your
pathway.
And
for us Western Sydney boys who didn't see snow until they were 26 years old, it's still a bit of a novelty when I go there. Like it,
you're there making snow, like snow angels.
We go out, we're in the shops, amazing. And there's a bit of a snowstorm, and it's like, something misses. Like, someone's got to brush the snow off the car. Oh yeah, I'll do it. Give me the brush. I'll get rid of the snow. Like, I enjoy it. We actually have a chalet up near Mont Tremblant. It's about 2 hours north of Montreal. It's a lake house, right? Yeah. It's a house that's on the lake, but during the winter, it's a massive, like, you can have boats and jet ski and everything on it during the spring and the summer, but during the winter, it completely freezes. So we have ski-doos and motorbikes and four-wheelers, and we're out there on the ice riding around. And whether it's at night time, I'm sitting by the fire with the four-wheeler there, we're cruising around in the snow. I just pinch myself sometimes. It's so surreal. And and I love it. So I get that. There's no doubt I could definitely see myself living there for a bit, for sure.
Yeah, make it fun. You're in the environment, but you control it. It's not the cold. It's
long term living there. I could understand. Like it's hard. It just makes life so much harder. Like, because you just got to prep everything. Like, you wear your boots, but you go into another person's house, so you got to bring your other spare shoes, right? So you take your wet boots off and put your shoes on. I get it, right?
It's just but to be fair, mate, people coming here, I'm going to get my sunscreen on. Like,
have you ever seen old photos of Quebec City at Christmas time?
No.
Do yourself a favour and look on your Instagram. Like, look at Quebec City, which is old Quebec, even further north than Montreal. And then it's like almost like the Rocks, right? You have the part of town that's sort of a little bit more modern, but still old school. But then you can go down in the old Quebec, which is like going to the Rocks. And like during the winter, during Christmas time, it is magic. It's like something out of a movie.
Yeah. I'll have to check that out. For sure. On a more serious note, I think it was 2 years ago, you had an extended period away from the game due to a number of concussions and some concussion-related incidences. How was that, and what gave you the peace of mind to continue on?
Well, it was a difficult and frustrating period for me because when we were playing, I always felt it was my fault because I was putting myself in vulnerable positions during the game, and that's what I was most disappointed at myself, because I told myself not to do it. Like, certainly some tackles, like two times in a row. Like, the first time that season was just, timing, wrong place, wrong time, caught a hip as he was like, I was sort of defending negatively on a short side. He come down, tried to step me inside, got my head in the wrong place, caught a hip, right? But then the next two times was because I came out of the line, outside in, and I had been wrong-footed. So instead of staying high and trying to management, I went down low both times and collected knees. It's just like, come on, man, you're making bad decisions. Like, that's putting yourself in a vulnerable position. A couple of things on that. So at the time, like, probably what made me the most comfortable was I felt okay almost straight away both times. I had no lingering effects. I passed my COG test. You need to see a neurosurgeon now. If you have multiple concussions, I did all the testing, it was fine. I came back to my baseline quite quick and had no lingering, symptoms, right? And then, so on the back of that period was the same time that Boydo called it quits because of his concussion issues, right? And, me and Boydo have known each other a long time, since, I used to play with his his older brother in rep team since we were like 12 years old, and Boydo was a gun kid too, so he would sometimes play in our trials, and so we've known each other a long time, and we've been close throughout our careers. So seeing him make that decision, I went over to his retirement announcement over at the SFS, and just talking to him about some of the stuff that he was experiencing. It was sort of apples and oranges. I wasn't having the same things, same sort of symptoms as Boydo, which was, as a mate, it was shattering to see, for him. But he made that decision, which was, he had to make that decision. It was the right move. He played hard for so long, and he couldn't have represented himself and his family in the game any better than he did. And it was a shame to see him go early, but it was the right decision. And then Jake Friend again on the back of that, another guy who's contemporary of mine, started at the same time, played junior footy against him. probably played the same amount of games, same amount of time. To see him go on the back of it, again, the pressure was building up, right? And at that stage, I'd already had, I think I had 2, and on the back of that, I'd had a third one. And again, came out of it, no delayed symptoms, back to the back to the baseline, back to the neuroscience surgeon, longer tests, more thorough tests, brain scan, all of it, but felt okay. But at that stage, the external pressure, I knew I had to have a break, and it wasn't definite. Like there's no definite science about how long the break should be. But I just knew that if I came out that season again and had another one, it could have been game over, right? The pressure, the external pressure from the game and the club. Like I never had pressure from the club to play or not to play. They were great with me. They just take your time, you do what you need to do, sit with the doctors, take your time through it. I never had any pressure like that. But I knew if I came out that season and had another one, that the pressure would have been really external. It wouldn't have mattered how I felt, even if I felt good. The external pressure would have got to the point where it was almost...
There'd have been calls for you to retire. There would have been, with immediate effect.
Yeah. And so, and all the, through all the discussions with the doctors and everything that I had, it's just, and in reflection, looking back, it was almost, I just had to break the cycle that I was in. I was in a cycle where I had, 3 in a row. I just had to break that cycle. Like, how do you break that cycle? What's the time, what's the time length? You don't really know. What's the perfect way? You don't really know. So I just made the decision, let's take all risk off the table. Let's not play for the remainder of the season, right? Which gives you, I think there was maybe 8 games to go that year. So there's, 2 months, 3 months, plus finals, plus your 8-week holiday, plus your pre-Christmas program. So, and at that stage, Fitz had already signed with the club. So I was speaking to him, and he's like, mate, you do what you got to do. Like, if you want to sit out, like, you won't even do contact until post-Christmas. So you've all got almost 6 months here, like, to break the cycle. And so we went down that path. I immediately sat out, went away with the family for a month, came back. The club, that's when they went up to Queensland, the bubble in Queensland, that back into that year. So the whole game moved up to Queensland. And Cam McInnes, because was recovering from his ACL, didn't go up in the bubble. He actually started training at the Sharks earlier because at that point in his ACL rehab, it was full tilt, right? You're doing all the conditioning, you're running loads. So I had a month off. I came back, started training with Cam, no contact, but just conditioning, right? Just running.
That would have been fun.
It was heaps fun. Gave me something to chase, let me tell you. But again, through that, actually, the harder. Anyone who's ever done ACL, like the back end of the training, it's hard, man. You're doing, 10-kilometre days sometimes because you just need to get that running load back in your legs. And I found with him, the harder actually we trained and the fitter I got, the better I was feeling. Like the more I was feeling like, yeah, okay, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling healthy. I'm okay. Like I felt okay. The better I felt. So then we just went through that, and Fitzy came across. Fitzy's great with all his contact. Everything was safe. I didn't do anything pre-Christmas. I did a lot of grappling and that, but no risk with heavy contacts. And then, we started the year fine. Like once the new year rolled around, it was full tilt in the training. Got tagged at training, like hit hard, clipped on the chin, was no effect, was just normal. Felt good. That gave me a bit of confidence. And then I never had any doubt after that point. Like I feel good. And my confidence just grew. So I think, and in reflection, looking back, I wish I'd had more time to recover from the first one, the very first one. I think I look back now in hindsight and go, that was the issue. I felt like I never fully recovered from the first one. So I came back and I was playing when I hadn't fully recovered, and I was getting tagged again. I was in that cycle where I just needed to give myself a proper break to get over that first one.
Are you concerned for the future? Like, yeah, you've recovered now, but are you looking forward and forecasting, thinking, I'm going to pay a price for this?
I haven't, overly thought it too much. Like, because I haven't overly thought, I would say I'm not concerned about it. Like, I understand, you call it what you will, but the game takes a toll on you physically, right? Whether it be your knee or your shoulders or your ankles, or you see some of the old blokes who are working and playing, like they're limping around. So, and their quality of life isn't great because of what the game did to you, and that's the sacrifice and that's the decision you make. So, physically, you're going to be dealing with damage for the rest of your life, and that's a consequence that I'm going to have to live with. Like, I'm going to have to live with that. Like, whether it be a consequence that comes later than the track because of the concussions, or whether it's a consequence down the track because of the damage I've done to my knees. It's a real thing, right? So I think I don't want to be caught in the trap of concern, like being concerned and having that worry on me right now. Like, because again, if you could tell me, knowing what I know now and knowing there might be issues down the track, would I trade it? Like, would I trade what I've done, or would I trade the risk, or would I trade the opportunity that I've had and the memories that I've made and the way that I've lived my life? I wouldn't trade it. I wouldn't. So I don't want to be concerned about what could happen, what might happen, because you know what? It might not happen. There might not be any issues. So I'm content with the decisions I've made. I understand the possibilities, but I'm gonna live my life.
I like that answer, mate. I really do. Like, I really do. Yeah, and I think it's important that we, like you say, you're very thoughtful in that answer, and it's not all doom. The game gives us great lives, and it might shorten the health span a little bit, but for a lot of us, it's probably improved the potential for our life.
Well, and now
beyond,
I look at
beyond belief.
Yeah, and now I look at it. It's improved the potential for my kids' life.
Yeah,
right. They're in a much more fortunate position than I was growing up, and they're gonna. I've been able to do that. Through the game. The game been a vehicle for me to be able to provide for my family. Yeah. My immediate family, my mum, my dad, my sisters, through that early part of my career, and now it's given me an opportunity to have this base, like that someday, hopefully, even if I do get sick down the end of the line, I go, here, boys, this, I've done this, I've been able to create this, and, do your best. Yeah. Hopefully I've raised them well enough that they don't throw it out the window. But, now, this stage of my life, I look at the boys and just go, well, it's everything I'm doing now is for you anyway. So,
yeah, you get some amazing experiences.
Yeah.
You as a kid.
It's a dream, mate. It's a dream.
Yeah.
You'd sacrifice something at the end to be able to live your dream for most of your life. Like, you give any person in their life that option. I know what option they're picking.
Especially when you're young.
Yeah.
Talking to the future, how are the Sharks looking for 2023? A top 4 finish last year, but then bundled out.
Yeah,
but you certainly showed what you were capable of with that top 4 finish. But how'd you improve on that for this season?
Yeah, 2 things with that. I think it's disappointing the way we did finish last year. Like, coming into the season, there's so many question marks, right? Like, question marks over Fitzy, first time as a full-time head coach. Question over Nico coming to the club. Question over Moiser, his injuries. Cam off his ACL. Dale changed from Melbourne. Like, it was a new sort of feeling around the crew. So there's a lot of question marks. But throughout the year, we certainly leaned into each other. We learned a lot about each other, and we got to the midpoint and we were tracking okay, and then we sort of hit another level going into the back end of the year, and we really started to find, right, this is us. Like, even at the start of the year, we didn't know how we were going to go. Like, you set your goals, and you have an idea of how you want to play your style and what your expectations are. But until you get out there and do it, and do some good stuff and obviously do some bad stuff and you get beat, you sort of go, okay, well, you start to navigate your way. So, yeah, that back end of the season, we really, I think we lost maybe one game coming home out of the last 9 or 10 games and really climbed up the ladder. So we really sort of learnt so much about each other, and the disappointment came from, being bundled out because we'd actually been defending so good and we just played bad. Like, we just didn't play well. Like, and that's not on anyone else but us. So we can't look around and go, oh, this and that. We just didn't perform at the level we needed to in this competition at that time of year. So this year is, we're miles ahead of where we were last year, like, because a lot of questions have been answered. We know, we're a year into all those relationships. We're
the combinations
a year in. We understand what Fitzy expects. We're a year into that. We're a year into everything. So we're in a much better place than we were last year. The other side of that trick is, it's not given to you. Like, in this game, you need to recreate it. You need to start from the start again, because every team's starting from the start again. And, we got so much experience, all our, like, the nucleus of our team, like, the Ronaldos and the Blake Brayleys and the Nickos and Teagues, and, I'm missing a lot of guys here, but all these young guys in the middle half of their career. It's probably the first time we've played at that level and got to where we did on the NRL ladder. So you've always been chasing, but there's a bit of a difference when you're in that pack, right, and you start being chased as well, and you need to start again. Like, you need to start from the start and recreate it. It doesn't just happen. You need to redo it all, and you learn that over time. And, when the moment you think it's just going to happen in the NRL, you get your pants pulled down by a team that's going to take it away from you. So
has that been a bit of a focus point? Like, we're not going to focus. Sorry, the focus point is we're not going to focus on September.
No, yeah, 100%.
So we're going to focus on this now,
the focus.
because you can fall into that trap of like, well, how do we improve on next year? Will we play better in September?
Yeah.
Well, we've still got to do what we did from March through to the end of August.
Again. Every year you got to start again. Yourself, you played such a long time in the UK and over here at every level. Like, every season you got to start from the start, and it's a marathon. Like, the NRL is a marathon. You need to be good enough to get through the year, to finish in good position, and to play the footy throughout the season that gets the job done in September. You need to get to that level during the season, while balancing out injuries and form and rep footy. And then once you get to September, you need to play that style at the right time and take your opportunity, because everyone's ready to go. So it's a marathon with this extra season at the end of it. It's such a hard sport, and it's so good. Like, that's why when you win the grand final, it's the best thing ever, because you know how hard it is.
And that's why it grips you for all the stakeholders, the fans. That's why they keep coming back for more, because it does. It's got to be. It grips you. It's amazing.
It has to be the closest competition in the world.
It is. If you look at any other sport and competition, I've said this before, around, like, if I'm looking at the English Premier League, before the ball's kicked, I reckon I could pick 3 teams that could win it, maybe 4, and others don't have a chance. So that's, like, out of 20 teams, that's less than 20% of the competition, I think. Maths is never my skill. If you look at the NRL, you could make a point that 40% of the teams from the 17 teams you could pick.
Yeah, that's at the start of the year.
Yeah.
Right? Then 2 other teams that most people pick go backwards. Yeah. And then 2 other teams that no one has, they always come forward. It's just such a...
I reckon it's got the biggest percentage of potential winners of any sport in the world, and it's something that we don't focus enough on, is the evenness of the competition.
I remember, I agree. I completely agree with you. I remember, like, I don't know whether it was 2 or 3 years ago, but so the top 4 and the bottom 4 of the 8 were separated by 2 points. So 4 teams ended up on this.
2018.
There you go. So 4 teams ended up on the same competition points. The top 4 were separated by for and against. And then the bottom 4 teams were 2 wins off them.
Yeah.
And that was the bottom of the 8, and they were separated by for and against. It's just, I remember looking at that year and just going, you can't script that. Like, you cannot script it, how close and how hard the competition is.
It was insane. With Fitzy in his second year, as coach has much changed in terms of how he's
not a lot.
applying himself, or the pre-season different?
Nah, no. I think we've just he's been able to sort of get into his gears a lot quicker than he had last year. Like he started from baby steps last year, from the very beginning. His new philosophy, new playing style, expectations. Again, forming relationships with new players, like a whole team. You have to form a new relationship. So he started from the beginning. He went, I'm going to take my time, be patient, and we're going to start from literally letter A, and we're going to get to letter Z. Where again, we've started from the start again this year, but he's been able to streamline it a bit more. Like the players have been able to follow straight into the systems and philosophies, and probably just advance them a little bit. If anything, add a new twist or another level to it. So he's a great coach. He's regardless. I'll say for me, like this year, last year, like over his period, Fitzy, just the bloke he is, the way he coaches, how he carries himself, his philosophy. Like the club is in a really good place to have some success for as long as he's there. What he's building and what he's trying to instill in the club and the playing group. As someone who's been at the club for a long time, and the time for me is coming to an end where I'm going to be leaving the club. Couldn't leave it in better hands. Like him, not just him, obviously has great staff. Joshy Henne and DJ run the offense through Fitzy, and then Steve Price. Him and Fitzy run the D, and then Nathan Picks, and we got Soups like Scotty Campbell, who's been around the game for the staff they're cool, man. They have a cool relationship. They all get along. They have a good time. They challenge each other. Like they have fun together. You see, and then the boys are the same. It rubs off on the boys. It's a good place to come in. It's always fun. We work hard, but the boys the young boys love tearing in and love working hard together, and it's always fun, man. It's such again, that being at the back end of my career, it just makes it easy, right? Yeah. You go in there with a smile on your face, you don't have to stress about what's happening. Everyone's just there, the whistle goes. Like, it's fun. You cross the line, the whistle goes, it's on. You get off, there's a bit of tempers every now and again, but the whistle's finished. Everyone's friends, we're back on the same page. Yeah, it's such a fun place to be at the minute.
Yeah, good. It sounds like a great environment, and I think that was reflected in the style that you played last year, and certainly, for someone that works in the media, you're a fantastic team to watch. Great style of play that I really enjoyed. But before any Sharks games get played this year, the Indigenous All-Stars game will be played in New Zealand, I believe, if my research is correct. Can you tell us about your personal journey and how important that is to you?
Yeah, well, it would be massive. I'd love to, potentially could be my last opportunity to play in the game. So it's certainly something I'd be looking forward to in a few weeks. Just with my story, so my old man grew up in Iluka, a place up far north coast. It's just above Grafton, and he sort of left there as a young man, and he came down to Sydney. His older brother was down here. They moved down here for a bit, and he ended up moving in with my mum quite young. He's maybe 14. They started dating. He moved in with my mum, so he really didn't have that great a connection to his family. He sort of left a lot of it behind him when he met my mum. So again, you fast forward a bit. I'm the third of 4 children, so I've got 2 older sisters, myself, and then a younger sister. There's 4 years between me and my oldest, and there's 8 years between me and the youngest. So she raised his only child almost. My older sister was looking after my younger sister when we were growing up. But they always mentioned that we had Indigenous heritage when we were young, but I never really knew too much about it. And again, like I've got family that I haven't even met up in that area just because of the family circumstances. So we really didn't talk all that much about that part of Dad's family or where he came from. But it's just something he always mentioned to me, like off the cuff, like or in certain points of our life. And then with the NRL, I got to the point where they Presto came up with the concept and introduced it. And did you play in the first one?
Not the first one.
The first one?
I played I did play in it, but not the first
one. So Preston come up with the concept, and then I was only just, I would have been maybe 20. I think I might have just moved to Cronulla, 20 or 21. And then it was like sort of getting, a bit more of a profile in the game. And I was talking to Dad about it because we were talking about the game, and I knew I had to do something because there was there possibly could have been an opportunity of me playing for the other team, the All-Stars, possibly being picked. But I was like, well, if they try to pick me, I'm going to say, well, I don't feel comfortable playing for them because my dad's got Indigenous heritage. Not that I'd connected to it or I knew a lot about it, but it was just like I probably wouldn't feel comfortable. And then so I think when we got wind of that, JT, actually, Jonathan Thurston messaged me one day after the team was picked and asked if I wanted to play. And I was like, I'm keen to play for sure, but I need to learn more. I don't want to just come and be. I knew how much the game and the concept meant for Presto and the Indigenous community. I didn't just want to rock up and play, a game of footy and be a token game of footy. I knew how much it meant. So I'd said to, I think JT, I said, thanks for the opportunity. Like, I really, he's the best player in the world at the time. Like, thanks for reaching out and, the opportunity to come and play, but just give me 12 months. I worked with Mark the Wheels, working at the NRL in the Indigenous space, and help trace back my family. I spoke to my dad first, actually, if he was comfortable with me doing it, and then we had a little bit of a journey, me and our family, through that space. And like I said, Mark from the NRL helped me a lot, and sort of reconnected a bit. And then the opportunity came out the next year to play, and it was wonderful. It's a wonderful opportunity to to celebrate our Indigenous culture. The game does it well. Like the NRL, it's one thing they do well. I think they're the best in Australian sport at it is celebrating, Aboriginal heritage and our Indigenous players. And the opportunity to play with JT the next year and GI in the middle. The first game I played was at Suncorp, and I played at Newcastle the following year. I missed out. I think it was not on one year because the Nines were on, and then last year I missed out because of the concussion stuff still come back, and I'd only just got back into contact, and it was like another risk-reward sort of situation. And then, so potentially my last opportunity to play in a few weeks over in New Zealand. I think the concept's, again, grown another leg as soon as it was the Māori boys got an opportunity to represent their culture. You've really seen a spark grow into it. So the first time to go over and possibly play in New Zealand is certainly, it's something I'm eyeing off, don't worry, for sure. But a few weeks of training to get through.
It'd be good. It's always, I think, a fantastic way for the NRL to kick off the season.
Yeah, again, I think one thing where the NRL does lead, in my opinion, in sport is the celebration of their Indigenous players and celebrating Indigenous culture. And like the game has been filled with players who have not just played at a high level, but have played within a style that just leaves a mark on the game, right? Like you think of our best players over the years, like even back, the Cliffy Lions and guys like that. They're not only, again, they play at the highest level. They played at the highest level, but they play with this unique style that just has an impact on the game.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed my time in camp there, and certainly learnt a lot in those couple of weeks I was in camp. It's fantastic what the game does, and it's important to celebrate it and the impact, not just that the game itself has. It's the week.
Well, that's
as well, which is it's again,
probably more important.
Probably a little bit,
The week's probably better than the game, like what the week does, and that's why it'd be cool to go to New Zealand this year and to go the other way around, because obviously the New Zealand Māoris are a lot long. Like I think the country is further along with how they've embraced their Indigenous culture, and they're so strong and so educated and so aware of it over there, and so proud over there. It'd be cool to go over and have the shoe on the other foot, and see how they host it. Yeah.
3 questions we've got for every guest this year. So you're our first guest. I probably should have give you a bit of a heads up about this, but first question: if rugby league didn't exist, or you didn't make it, what do you think you would have done with your life?
I probably just would have worked with my dad, to be honest. My dad's a plumber by trade, but he's had a few different, he was concreting for a lot of years there as well. And if I don't think, I probably would have started with Dad, certainly helping him out and just working with him. I probably would have got a trade just to have something, like whether it be in Dad's footsteps or my own trade that I picked. And I would have had to, once that had been done, I would have seen where life took me.
Yeah, fair enough. Who's the most interesting person that you've met?
Oh, that's a tough one. That's a tough one.
Yeah, I don't know. Charlie.
Interesting. Oh, it's hard.
That is a generic term, interesting.
Yeah. Well, there's
some strange cats that we play with.
100%. I'd say new, right? Because to go back, it would be, there's a million people I could bring up. But I'd say it's been really interesting to meet Fitzy, right? Because Fitzy, I don't know how much time you spent with him, but he's a really deep thinker. Like, he's a really deep thinker. And he says some stuff, and then like there can be some conversations with him that I'm having, and I'll say something, you can see it triggers something in him, and you can see his eyes go like way back, and he's thinking on something. I was like, what's he thinking? Like, in my head, I think, what's he thinking about here? And then he'll come out with something about some psychology term or some philosophy, someone who's said something, or he's a deep thinker. He's not a man of many words, but the words he does say you can tell they've been deeply thought about. So I do appreciate the conversations that I have. And to be honest, he's a bit like yourself. I know you think deeply on a lot of things. Have you had him on the podcast?
Yes, we have.
Oh, you have? I missed that one. I'll have to have a look at that one, because
he was excellent.
You could dive into some deep subjects, you and him, I think.
He was excellent. That is definitely a buttering off.
One more year, Fitz.
He's the best person. The
one
most
more year.
interesting.
No, most
intelligent.
New.
He's such an intelligent person.
New. In the last 2 years.
Yeah. Final question. So I think about this sometimes when I reflect, and there's been some like big crossroads, in your career and in your life. But what's the biggest sliding doors moment that you've had?
For me, so after we had that, obviously it's a well-known part of the ASADA stuff at Cronulla, and off the back of the ASADA stuff, we came back. We played 2014, and then I came off contract at the end of 2014, and I had the opportunity to leave. I had the opportunity to go to South. South had just won the competition. It was a great deal. Michael Maguire was coach. Obviously, Sammy was playing there. GI was there. They'd won the comp. And the money was quite they probably had a little bit more than Cronulla offered. And I had the opportunity, to lead the club. And at that stage in 2014, I was still angry at a lot of things, like angry at how the whole thing had played out, angry at the situation, a bit angry at some people at the club. Felt like I'd wasted a few years because it was a 2-year process, right? And I had that a little bit of animosity in me. I was a young man, right? I had that animosity in me. But then I remember I was sitting down with my manager at the time. It was the last deal I signed with the Sharks. And I just felt like we had something to give. I felt like we had something more at the club. And I know we'd worked through that bad period, but every year Flannel was the coach. I felt like every year we just got a little bit better and a little bit better, and I remember talking to him. I said, I just feel like we've got more to do here. So I stayed at the club, and then 15 we didn't start well, but we finished the season strong. A little bit similar to our story last year. We got bundled out. Cowboys beat us, I think, 38-0 up in North Queensland in the semi. And then they go on to win the comp, and then 2016 rolls around, and it was our time, and I'm so glad I stayed. Like, best thing you could achieve in the game is to win a grand final with your mates who you've worked so hard with, and and the club, first in the club's history. Yeah, it just, I'm glad that I stuck it out and made that decision. The feeling was right.
Good answer. Well, Wade, Matt, honestly, I've thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. I think you're an amazing first guest back for the new season. Thank you so much for joining us on the buy round and giving us an amazing bit of insight into your career, what's going on with the RLPA, those sliding doors moments, you buttering up Fitzgibbon. It's been an amazing chat, and again, for sharing your journey in the concussion space and some personal stuff as well. It's been amazing, mate. It's been an amazing chat. It really has.
No, it was a pleasure, mate. Obviously, enjoy our time together. We do a bit on the side with Triple M calling the game, so I think you're doing good things here with Charlie, and I look forward to keeping an eye on you this year.
Cheers, mate.